the Middle East. Good morning on a Tuesday. Jack Heath, our Capital Studios here, not far from the State House. J-Dog on the boards. We're looking at a pretty good start to our Tuesday. Got some mixed. I always like to, be an optimist. Some sun and clouds versus cloud and sun. Mid 60s for a high, so not a bad looking Tuesday. J-Dog on the boards, and as we get going this morning, we have a packed show for you, so buckle up. We're going to be telling you in a few moments about big time pizza manufacturing back in Pittsfield, New Hampshire. That's right, national pizza eaters. Some of the biggest retailers. The pizza might be made in Pittsfield, New Hampshire. We'll tell you about a positive manufacturing story locally. Also, prescription drug prices. President Trump, before going to the Middle East, signing that executive order to lower prescription drug prices in terms of how to a level other countries pay. For example, we get screwed over. People don't know this, but we do. The way drug prices are set, our own government can't even negotiate some of the Medicare, Medicaid costs with pharmaceutical companies. So they're probably going a little bonkers this morning as Trump takes on that industry. But we'll talk about the veteran side of care in a moment in New Hampshire on an observation from yesterday. But real quickly, so President Trump is in Saudi Arabia in the kingdom. I don't know if you saw this. Pretty cool, by the way, if you love like military, international stuff. Trump coming in, Air Force One getting a fighter jet escort once they got over the kingdom skies, if you will, in to meet with the king of Saudi Arabia, and then on to, of course, in college, it was either Qatar or Qatar, but and then eventually Dubai. And the president's talking about getting more than $1 trillion in business pledges and commitments to do business in the United States over the next 7 to 10 years. I just have a question. I just have a quick question this morning. I'm going to try and behave this morning and keep the cylinders a little low as we get going. But I have a question for you. For the naysayers out there, and there's going to be a category of folks, sometimes within our own families, I get it, I understand it, we're not going to like anything at all what the Trump administration does in the second term. They're rooting for failure, not success, because they can't stand Donald Trump. And yes, Elon Musk went with Trump to the kingdom. But I got a question. Isn't it kind of nice, or maybe you can't say this, isn't it kind of cool to have a president of the United States talking positively about our manufacturing and our defense contractors here in America to do business here with the richest countries in the world? I mean, isn't that kind of good? For the next several years, that Saudi Arabia will be buying more from the United States, Qatar buying more from the United States, Dubai buying more from the United States. Isn't that kind of cool? He's not on an apology tour. He's not over there with mixed messages. Hey, America's great. Let's do business with us. I don't know. It doesn't really bother me. Even if I didn't like Trump politically speaking or personally, I think that's pretty cool. But again, we'll see where it goes. And of course, the markets yesterday, big up. Today, they're a little down. Will the Federal Reserve lower interest rates in June? Maybe. We're not sure. But the trade stuff continuing, of course, what a weekend. The president and his team come out cutting the deal or talking about the deal with China, 90-day reprieve on the big tariff boost from both countries, over 100%, but 90 days. Markets loving that yesterday. American released, these young member of the Israeli army released after more than 500 days held captive by Hamas. Now President Trump over in the Middle East. A lot happening. Going to get some analysis from, and what you're not paying attention to is what's going on in Congress with the quote unquote, I don't know if it's a tax bill, but they'll call it a big bill. Brad Card, one of our political analysts and all-stars, he'll also tell us our guest this week on Contact Politics, our weekly podcast. Put your helmet on, our Pulse Podcast Network. Good morning, Brad. Well, a lot happening since the weekend. I just have to tell you, a lot happening. I don't know how some people keep up with it. We try, you try. What's standing out in your mind? Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. But look at Brad. Look at Massachusetts. Look at Massachusetts. Where they're spending $1 billion a year in local taxpayer money, and but but Brad, you and I, speaking of our podcast, we had a the congressional budget. But anyway, the people who look at the deficit or debt, and we had their one of their other people on this week, and if we don't do something about Social Security, and a lot of people listening that rely on those checks or two a month for a spouse or a couple that's receiving Social Security in 7 years, it's upside down. You can take a 20% haircut if we don't do something now. Yep. Hmm. Right. Do you, I know. Well, the only way people can understand is when you tell them things like Social Security, not many years are you're gonna take a haircut. We have Hey, before I let you go, real quick, I want to tell you, I want you to tell us who our guest is on Contact Politics. A new edition will be available at the Pulse of an H and everywhere you get your podcast, Spreaker, Apple, Spotify, you name it, tomorrow. Brad, the Massachusetts governor's race, a Republican actually has announced he's going to run against like Brian Shortsleeve is going to run against Governor Healy down there on the Republican or to challenge her. But here in New Hampshire, Democrats say Governor Kelly Ayotte will be vulnerable with budget cuts in the budget, but yet no Democrat of any significant name recognition has jumped in. And then also the U.S. Senate race here. Are we going to see someone before Memorial Day on the Republican side, whether it's Scott Brown or someone else jumping? Because right now, Chris Pappas is kind of the lone person in the field. Yeah. Good get. Good get. Good guest. Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Great guess. Great. That'll be a good one tomorrow. All right, Brad, make it a good Tuesday. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the economy, interest rates, tariffs, trade, doing business with the uncertainty of what's happening, but also more certainty after the weekend, it looks like, at least with China. And big time pizza manufacturing is back in New Hampshire. You may not know it, but nationally, your pizza pie could be made right in Pittsfield, New Hampshire. Got a great business story on deck next. All right. All right. We are back on a pretty okay Tuesday. A lot going on. We have a pack show coming up in a little bit. Our own White House correspondent, John Decker, he's been trying to keep up. Imagine being a White House correspondent these days, trying to keep up with this administration. I mean, I got to tell you, as Brad just, I've never seen anything like where every day, every 48 hours, actually, forget it, every 24 hours, there's something to react to, and it's usually not small. But listen, we're going to have a great positive economic discussion with the break here in our studios. Not a break. We're going to talk about all the above. and tell you what he's up to these days. But we're gonna tease and promote that in a moment. But first, bringing back Dr. Vic, aka Dr. Vikram Manchuramani, and we call him Dr. Vic here, on with me a lot in the past until he uh, ran for office again. Did a great job, but maybe back in the business sector. Not in Congress, and he disappeared for a while. I contacted the U.S. Marshals and they found him. No, I'm kidding. He disappeared, starting up a great new business operation, manufacturing. Before we get to that, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Jack. Thrilled to be back with you.
How's family? Everyone good? You good? You seem relaxed.
Everyone's fabulous. It's a nice spring day. Here in New Hampshire, nothing to complain about.
Well, you have the distinction. I'm not going to put you on the hot seat. Teaching at Harvard, teaching at Yale, talking about economics in the past. You've talked to trade groups. Speaking of the Middle East and Dubai and places, you've traveled around on the manufacturing, the economy. Where's this economy act? I got to tell you before we went on, Dr. Vic, I was pleasantly surprised this weekend. The Secretary of the Treasury, a new figure out there. A lot of people don't even know who he is yet. And the team effectively dealing with China. I thought this was going to take a lot longer to get anything hammered out for a 90-day sort of halt in the big tariffs with China. I know we do more business with Canada, but I think all the other ones can fall pretty quickly if you get something done with China. But a lot of people are not sure what's going on with the economy. Is the Federal Reserve going to lower rates next month? Are we slipping into a slowdown? Real estate's still unaffordable here. So I haven't had you on in a while to say, what is happening with our economy, Dr. Vic?
Yeah, it's been filled with uncertainty across the board, right?
Yeah.
The tariffs, the trade war, the inflation coming down this morning on some recent data. But what we know is that business leaders and trade and economic activity was slowing dramatically during the first quarter. We know that, right? In fact, the inflation data, which is looking backwards, says that. We also know that there's been less freight activity. We know that less goods are moving around.
Yeah, we've seen the trucking people. You have a background of being on a board of a major trucking operation, moving stuff on the roadways, which is usually shipped here or flown here. And a lot of people haven't talked about the constriction or the reshuffling within the trucking industry. I've seen a lot of stories, whether it be UPS or talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, look, trucking is in the midst of a massive slowdown right now. The company I was associated with was a company called Werner Enterprises, reported their first operating loss in 10 years. Right, so we know there's a slowdown. People are moving around less stuff. Period. We know that the ports coming into California had less active.
What sparked that? The trade uncertainties or the global stuff or not?
Trade uncertainty, tariff risk. If you're shipping something from China
right
to the United States and you have a cost of that good when you load it on the ship and you're not sure what the cost will be when it lands,
you're going to load less stuff on the ship.
Absolutely. You just don't know.
I mean, it's human nature.
And so people got paralyzed into doing less.
And even if that starts a month ago or two, you see the ripples for a while.
That's right. Yeah, Jack, this ripple is going to continue. Even if the China trade war is quote unquote over, people will start shipping out of China now. It's going to take some time to
could be 3 to 6 months. Could be the fall before you. Yep. But I've been hearing too, a lot of independent business owners and remodeling, builders, suppliers dealing with Canada, dealing with other countries. They didn't know whether a month or two ago to stock up, which means they were dipping more into capital to buy stuff to put on the shelves or the warehouse in case it goes up in 3 months. They have more stuff, or sit. And a lot of this uncertainty, I think, slowed the economy down locally. I'm starting to hear about price cuts in some hot markets here by builders, or anything over $1 million, $1.5 million, which seems like a lot of money these days. But in New Hampshire, it's not to buy a home anymore, especially hot markets, Bedford, Bow. Even you and I were talking about even the mountains with some of the resort homes, the seacoast. It's hard to get in. I mean, you don't know. I don't know if people know this. I got news for you. I said this a year ago. If you want to buy a home in Rye, New Hampshire right now, or a lot of land for $600,000, it's going to cost you over $1 million to build a home. It's going to be closer to $2 million now in Rye. If you buy something that's over $1 million, you got to put money into the bathrooms and the kitchen because it's probably a 30-year-old house or someone's cashing out. You're close to $2 million now to buy a home in Rye, $1.5 million in Portsmouth. These are the general price points. Can you imagine that if we had said this 10 years ago?
I agree. Well, the one thing New Hampshire has going for it is there's a tailwind of inflow, right? There's people moving here because of our economic.
But do they remember why they left their states they're moving from?
Their politics where
No, but do they?
leaving from.
Are they leaving them?
I'd like to hope they.
You're out of politics now. You're running a business.
I like to believe that they're going to come here for what we offer, not to bring what they're running from.
Okay, so you have run for public office, so you put your money, put your, on the line. Take some guts. You've done it not once but twice, but you've run.
You've done it too, Jack.
I know, but you care and you love the state and country. You love your family. You actually had the, let's say, the chutzpah or the guts to do it. Not everyone does. Okay, um, you came out of it, obviously landing on your feet, but your passion is business.
Always was.
So don't tell us kind of the name of everything, but you have a new baby that you've bought and you've launched, and you have how many people now working there? How many employees?
So we probably employ about 70-ish people right now, Jack.
You just
So
started,
started
less than
in
6
December.
months ago.
Started in December. Exactly.
70 employees,
70.
right on the front line of making something, manufacturing.
We are manufacturing frozen pizzas at a reasonable price of really high quality. And honestly, Jack, we're fighting inflation, food price inflation.
Right.
We're fighting it by offering a really high quality product at a reasonable price.
But you're doing it, and you took something over that obviously had not made it in the past. But in a community like Pittsfield, 70 full-time jobs are 70 families in the area, in that ballpark. But that's families as a multiplier, because if that in Pittsfield, New Hampshire, there is manufacturing, all that, but it's not like as big as Manchester and Nashua or Salem, New Hampshire. That's a big employer, and it's a great positive business story. We're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back and talk some pizza. Who doesn't like pizza? J Dog, I brought you back some when I got a tour recently. You liked it, right? You thought it was good, right? What do you mean you haven't had it yet? All right, back on the pulse of an H in a moment. So now we'll just have some Yep. I'm glad we moved to Dover when we did. We had no idea that where we moved to.
You like
The
this?
townhome. Yeah, I like it a lot. I love the location. It's quieter people. My walks are great on the river, the Bellamy and the
We're
bay.
thinking of getting a place
But I got to tell
that
you,
we sell well.
I don't realize how well we did. I'll talk to you later about that. It's hard to get a place with a boat. I'm putting my boat in tomorrow. Huh? Yeah, you take it if you want. Huh?
I promised her I'd bring her my book. I never did.
Good. Okay, we're coming back. All right, we are back. Dr. Vic, we call him. Dr. Vic is the CEO and owner now, principal owner, but you have a team, Pittsfield, New Hampshire, and it's all about pizza. J Dog, about a month or so ago, I got to see the operation, and I'm always amazed when you go in this day and age and you see actual manufacturing taking place. Not a lot of people see it, not enough anymore. And I'm not bringing up politics, but I think it's one thing that President Trump's trying to do again. It's expensive to do what you're doing, employing people, high tech equipment, some of these computerized manufacturing computers, if you will, conveyor belts. These are not cheap. But anyway, Dr. Vic, it's called Goodwell Foods, kind of an umbrella name. And you've only been going really since what, the end of the year, beginning of the
December.
yeah.
Been in operation 6 months and 1 week.
So some people may in the capital region or New Hampshire may remember rustic pizza and all the way back foodies pizza, a rustic crust foodies. So there's some genesis of pizza making in Pittsfield. So tell us the story, what you're doing and what was and what is.
Well, Jack, during my campaign last summer, you might recall that Rustic Crust had two locations in Pittsfield, manufacturing pizza, and shut down quite abruptly. After that happened, there was a sales process where they were trying to liquidate the assets. They found a buyer that ended up not closing. They found another buyer that ended up not closing. And they were about to liquidate the assets, take the equipment out of the buildings, and sell them off. Liquidate, literally.
And you'd have an empty building there.
You'd have an empty building, and you'd have equipment that was sold for cents on the dollar
Right.
across the country, etc. Some of it might have even melted down for the steel value. Honestly, they were that desperate. And so I got a call. I was down in the Cayman Islands learning how to dive, and they said, "Hey, is there anything you'd be willing to do here? You said you're interested in business. You want to get back at it." I said, "Fine, I'll take a look." And so I did a lot of diligence. I learned about the market, and as you know, I think about the economy. And I knew there was going to either be inflation or a recession or some discomfort, economic uncertainty. And I wanted a business that I could get involved in that would prosper in almost any condition. And if you got inflation and consumers are pinched, you know what, Jack? They don't eat out as much. They eat pizza. And if you got a recession and consumers lose confidence, you know what? They don't eat out as much. They eat pizza.
Hold the thought. We just have J Dog's 1 minute. John Decker, our own White House correspondent. He's been traveling all around the way. For all I know, he's on a brand new. No, he's not on Air Force One in Saudi Arabia. John, how do you keep up with this White House these days? How do you keep up with this White House these days? I can't keep up with it since the weekend. Well, what stands out to you this morning? Because I think what the president's doing in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and then, of course, Dubai, upwards of $1 trillion in business back to the United States from the wealthiest nations of the world. Some people aren't going to be happy that Elon Musk is there with the president, but that's maybe they'll go out and key a Tesla. But my question is, the trade stuff with China, I didn't expect something would get done that quickly. Obviously, the markets didn't expect that either yesterday. What stands out to you? And more deals, I would imagine, in the next 15 to 30 days to come. Get some rest. You're not in Saudi Arabia. Get some rest. Thank you, John Decker, our own White House correspondent. So, Dr. Vic, Pittsfield, New Hampshire, you went from diving into Cayman Islands, I love that, to taking a look at the operation, but you were saying something about inflation and wanting something that would be a little bit recession or inflation proof. So you looked at this, but you're not, no offense to Domino's, you're not making a few pizzas a day there, but this is a big operation. So tell us what you did.
Well, just to give people listening a sense of the scale, we'll make over 100,000 pizzas a day. We have the capability of even pushing that up higher, and we're investing right now in the facility to take that capacity even higher.
100,000 pizzas a day.
You saw them coming off the line when you visited.
Yeah. And you have what, upwards of what, 70 or more than, about 70 employees?
Yeah, we probably
More than,
we have some tech employees to deal with surges in demand, but yeah, we have let's say 70-ish employees.
that's a big operation because it's not just, again, you're making pizza, but it's the packaging, it's the cheese, it's the refrigeration. And you are selling to some if I remember right from my tour, you can get your pizzas as an individual. We can buy them.
American retailers have them, yep, under their brand. So we're a private label
Explain that.
manufacturer. So I don't have a brand, Chuck. You can't find Goodwill pizzas in a grocery store. We have customers coming to us and saying, we want to have our brand, you manufacture the pizza. So for instance, you could go into many stores. I'm not going to tell you which one's our customer, but you can go into stores and you'll find like there's a DiGiorno's pizza and then there's a Hannaford's pizza underneath it.
Right.
Or you go into
Right.
any of these number of stores,
Yeah.
large retailers around the country.
I know the section well.
They have their own brands,
Right.
called private label, and so we're a private label manufacturer.
Smart. You're making it for big players.
That's right. So I don't have
One of
to
the
talk-
biggest retailers in the country, I hear, is a customer.
Yeah, that's right. We don't talk about that, but yes, that's true.
I mean, but that's good for employment security in Pittsfield because you're not in a fickle market.
No.
Pizza's a constant. Pizza's not going away. And by the way, if it's if it's $140 to go out to dinner, someone may go get a pizza. I mean,
So that's what I was getting at before the break, because our Decker comments here was in times of inflation, consumers get pinched and they buy more frozen pizzas. In times of recession and economic uncertainty, they stop going out as much. They conserve capital and they
Mhm.
know what they eat at home? Frozen pizza. So the frozen pizza market is generally a recession-resistant business and is a stable business. And so that's part of the reason why I got into it. That was number one. Number two, the private label business grows in recession. So we're seeing an increase in demand for our style of frozen pizza. Number three, because of the obesity dynamic, the obesity trends in this country, and the obesity drugs, we've seen people move towards smaller sizes, smaller portions.
custom, like a individual serving.
Portions. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we make single serve frozen pizzas. So that's a trend that's helping us.
And you're doing all that in Pittsfield, New
We're doing
Hampshire.
all that in Pittsfield, and we're using natural ingredients. We do not use chemical preservatives in most of our products.
Wow.
So I've lined up, I've been a global trend watcher, and I'm saying economic uncertainty, the obesity dynamic, and
Yeah,
obesity
yeah,
drugs,
yeah.
the natural ingredients, the RFK factor, call it what you want, but the
But-
Make America
But
Healthy.
you're entrepreneurial, but you're a business person. You the nuts and bolts are there. Are you enjoying this?
I'm having a ton of fun, Jack. This is a blast. Like you saw, you came
Yeah,
through with us.
it's fun.
Great team.
Yeah.
Building a culture.
I love when you go visit there, J-Dog. They bring a small warm pizza to you when you're sitting in the conference room. Here's a pizza while you're visiting us. Why not? Why not?
So we built a great team, Jack. We've got a great product.
Mhm.
We've got a great industry. We're going in the right direction. We're investing more in the facility. We're investing in the
This has to be huge news to the families in and around Pittsfield. I imagine some people drive 30, 40 minutes to go to their job there, but it's a solid, dependable employment home for them. Because if you didn't do this, there'd be Zippo there. I'm telling you, I take it back. Someone may have opened up a furniture manufacturing, making high-end cabinetry or something, or kitchen cabinets. But the point is, there are jobs there and people were used to working there and they can continue to work there.
Yeah. Look, I think there was a little PTSD in the community and even with some of the current
Sure.
and former employees because of how the last business shut down. But what we're offering is a stable environment
Right.
with a reasonable business plan, proper structure and strategy for success over the long run. And we're trying to be a good community member. We're hiring people, giving them opportunities.
Are you looking for employment now?
We're always looking for good
And what's the best way someone can go there, follow up, website?
Yeah, so we do have a website.
I'll be J Dog and I will be pizza taste testers,
Perfect.
not makers, taste testers.
We'll bring you guys in for that purpose. No, we're always looking to hire good people, Jack.
What's the best way to learn more?
GWFNH.com. So it's goodwellfoodsnh.com. So the website is GWFNH.com. We are also on social media. So it's Goodwell Foods. Twitter or everywhere.
So-
We've been promoting.
So
We've been hiding, Jack. We've been putting our head down and working for the last 6 months. So this is my first.
this is your first public talking about that. I think it's great, and you're a friend, and I appreciate it. And it's interesting. No disrespect to the former First Lady Jill Biden, she was a PhD, so she liked to be called doctor. You're a PhD, so I don't know. I call you Dr. Vic for good reason, but you're the chairman. Did you think when you were teaching at that Ivy League school in Cambridge, Mass, a number of years ago, that you'd be making 100,000 pizzas a day, owning a company that?
Well, owning a company was not something I could have predicted that I'd go back into business if the political endeavors didn't work out. That I believe is something I did think was possible. Pizza specifically, no.
And manufacturing, even with the high tech, because I was impressed with how sterile, clean, modern, and professional your workers were, and the tour of the facility, which I understand you have to be today.
Well, Jack,
I mean, a restaurant.
I spend a lot of money on food safety, quality, cleanliness. We stay up to the highest standards because if you don't have food safety, you got nothing.
And you're going, how many shifts there?
Well, now we're down to one shift a day.
Okay.
During our ramp up, we needed to fill.
You were going round the clock.
We were going 13 days off.
All right, well.
24 hours, 1 day off.
All right.
Now we're down to a more normalized level, and we're going to grow from here.
So the website again? All right, Goodwell, but that's a generic name because you're making really custom pizzas for very large retailers. So when you go, no, we're not going to give you hints, but when you go to that grocery store and you'll see that micro brand that might be the grocery store's brand, you don't know that pizza could be made right in Pittsfield, New Hampshire. What's better than that? All right, thanks, Dr. Vic. I love it. Good luck. Thanks for breaking the news here. All right, hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of NH. Come back. We'll talk about the effort to lower prescription drug prices. Dan Leonard will be on deck next. That was good. That was fun. All right. Yesterday when this story, there's so much happening. We just had our own White House correspondent, John Decker, covering the White House. It's day to day, every 24 hours, trying to keep up with it all. But one of the things before President Trump went to this big, it actually is an historic trip to the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and then Dubai, some of the wealthiest nations on earth. President Trump trying to get them to do more business here. I don't know what people would have an issue with that, but you know what I'm saying. Some people always will. But he signed an executive order before he left to lower drug prices in America to bring them more in line with the prices that patients in other countries, for example, um, Europe pay. So joining us is Dan Leonard. Now, Dan and I go back to, believe it or not, J Dog, television days at WMUR TV. But Dan went on to Capitol Hill, did a lot of stuff in public policy and healthcare. He's been a contributor on the healthcare side. We'll get him back again, but he's executive director of We Work for Health, a policy organization in Washington looking at preserving America's leadership role in science, innovation, and other things. But Dan, back to the show, talking about this executive order and will it automatically lower these high prescription drug prices? So thanks for being back with us. That's a good way to put it. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Is that sort of the is that the goal? But is that the goal behind this order to kind of do what you just said in terms of trying to level the playing field? Well, right. Well, well, let me ask you this. Why, maybe that answers the question, Dan Leonard. Why do we pay more for prescription drugs here? Mhm. Right. Well, right. But okay, well, let's stay on the prescription drugs. I guess the question is, why, for example, is it true that Medicare, for example, it used to be the VA, can't even negotiate with pharmaceutical, in terms of what we pay? We're almost held hostage, the our government, for example, to negotiate Medicare drugs that will be covered or VA. Why is that? Right. Well, who are these middlemen? But see, you're used to this world. Right now, you've lost a lot of people listening because this is all convoluted intentionally, and I think our healthcare system is a racket, all about money. So, who are these middlemen? It sounds like they're the ones screwing up the problem. Are they? Who are these companies? So, like, who are they? Yeah. So it is kind of a racket. The whole thing's a racket. So 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 the president wants. But the question is, before we let you go, Dan Leonard, and again, we work for health is the group. We work for health. You can tell us the website. Will this executive order over time lower prescription drug prices for consumers? Yes or no, if you had to say today. What a racket. I talk about when I'm frustrated with veterans healthcare, a lot of the therapies that are saving lives for veterans are not even covered by the federal healthcare system. And if it's not a pill, it's amazing, but it's a racket. It's a lot of money, but you know what? We'll get you back again because there's a lot here. It is complicated. I understand that, but I think you'd agree with me, Dan Leonard. You used to be a media guy that could boil down very quickly when you're looking at a complicated story. I think it's intentionally complicated so the sheep out there don't understand, when you go to CVS or you go to your pharmacy, how the whole system works. All right. Well, thank you very much, Dan Leonard. What's the website? All right. I know. I've heard that. Oh, we'll get you back in soon, Dan Leonard. Thank you. We come back. We'll talk about the gold standard and a lot more next.